No man is worthy of respect if he cannot first respect himself. Epictetus. You wonder why it is so hard to respect yourself? Why you look in the mirror and see potential but not worth? Why you talk to yourself in a tone you would never use with a stranger? Why every achievement feels smaller than it should, and every failure feels heavier than it needs to be? Why you dismiss your strengths and obsess over your flaws? Why you feel like you're never enough no matter how much you do? You think self-respect is some mysterious trait that other people simply have. Confidence, self-assurance, inner power. But the truth is far more uncomfortable. You struggle to respect yourself because you keep giving yourself reasons not to. Self-respect is not a feeling. It's an accumulation of evidence. Evidence that you can trust yourself. Evidence that you keep your promises. Evidence that you act according to your values. Evidence that your words align with your behavior. When those pieces of evidence are missing, your mind cannot respect itself. Why? Because it knows the truth. You can lie to others. You can deceive the world. You can hide behind a curated image, but you cannot hide from yourself. You know every moment you avoided responsibility, every time you gave in to weakness, every excuse you made, every promise you broke, every time you chose comfort over growth, every time you let fear lead your decisions, every time you said tomorrow to something you should have done today. And eventually, your mind learns this pattern. I cannot rely on myself. And where there is no reliability, there can be no respect. You think the problem is lack of confidence, but the real problem is lack of self-trust. Self-respect dies when you witness your own inconsistency. It dies when your intentions never become actions. It dies when your desires never become discipline. It dies when you treat yourself like someone unworthy of effort. You lose respect for yourself the same way you lose respect for anyone else, through repeated disappointment. If a friend constantly lied to you, made promises and broke them, avoided hard things, blamed others, quit when things got difficult, sabotaged their own progress, you would stop respecting that friend. Your brain reacts exactly the same way when you behave like that. You are disappointed in yourself because you know you are capable of more, and you know you are letting yourself fall below your potential. But here is the twist. Most people don't suffer from lack of ability. They suffer from lack of alignment. The gap between who they are and who they pretend to be grows so wide that self-respect collapses under the weight of the lie. The Stoics warned, "Do not speak like a wise man if your actions remain foolish." Your mind listens to your actions, not your fantasies. You cannot think your way into self-respect. You must behave your way into it. Another reason you struggle with self-respect is comparison. You measure your worth against people who show only their victories. You compare your internal chaos to their external perfection. You measure your progress by timelines that never belong to you. And of course, you come up short, because comparison is a weapon pointed at your own self-worth. When you constantly compare, you train your brain to focus on what you lack instead of what you possess. You turn every strength into not enough. You turn every achievement into too late. You turn every effort into others are doing better. Your identity becomes built on inferiority instead of truth. The Stoics understood that comparison is the thief of dignity. You cannot respect yourself while constantly convincing yourself that you're smaller than everyone else. You also struggle with self-respect because you speak to yourself in ways that destroy your inner foundation. Every insult, every moment of self-loathing, every thought of inadequacy becomes a brick in the wall you build against yourself. You bully yourself, then wonder why you feel weak. You criticize yourself, then wonder why you feel incapable. You shame yourself, then wonder why you can't grow. If you talk to anyone long enough with contempt, they break. When you talk to yourself that way, you break. You become both the abuser and the abused. Self-respect cannot grow in a hostile inner environment. Another reason? You treat your boundaries like suggestions instead of laws. You let people take advantage of you. You tolerate disrespect. You stay silent when you should speak. You accept crumbs because you're afraid of losing scraps. You let others define your value, and then you adopt their definition as truth. How can you respect yourself when you allow others to treat you worse than you deserve? Respect is not built through approval. It is built through boundaries. Every time you let someone cross a line, your self-respect erodes. Every time you say yes out of fear instead of honesty, your self-worth shrinks. Every time you choose peace over dignity, your mind takes note, I do not defend myself. You also struggle with self-respect because you live in the future instead of the present. You judge yourself not by who you are now, but by who you think you should already be. You punish yourself for not arriving at destinations you haven't even traveled toward. You resent yourself for goals you haven't even executed on. You feel behind, and that feeling transforms into self-loathing. But self-respect cannot grow in a mind that refuses to acknowledge progress unless it is perfect. Growth is messy. Progress is uneven. Becoming someone you respect takes time, not fantasy. And perhaps the deepest reason, you have never forgiven yourself for the mistakes you made when you were younger, for the opportunities you missed, for the relationships you ruined, for the bad habits you built, for the fears that controlled you, for the times you chose weakness over strength. You carry regret like a burden that bends your spine, and you punish yourself long after the lesson has been learned. The Stoics preached forgiveness not as mercy, but as necessity. You cannot respect a person you refuse to forgive, even if that person is you. So how do you rebuild self-respect? Slowly, quietly, through choices, not fantasies, through action, not inspiration, through discipline, not emotion. You rebuild it by keeping promises to yourself, even small ones. You rebuild it by doing what you say you will do. You rebuild it by acting according to your values, even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. You rebuild it by showing yourself that you can rely on yourself. You rebuild it by reducing comparison, by protecting your attention, by honoring your effort. You rebuild it by speaking to yourself with firmness instead of cruelty. You rebuild it by enforcing boundaries that reflect your worth. You rebuild it by forgiving the old version of you so the new version can breathe. You rebuild it by choosing consistency over intensity, by proving to yourself daily that you are someone who follows through. And you rebuild it by remembering the Stoic truth. Self-respect is earned internally, not granted externally. No amount of validation, achievement, or admiration can replace the quiet power of looking at yourself and knowing you act with integrity. Respect grows in the space where your actions and your values meet. Become someone you can rely on, and you will become someone you respect.